Well, thank you, everyone. So we've got the enviable slot of after lunch. So if I do see some eyes start to close, some heads start to nod off, I'm going to ask everybody to get up and we're going to do some stretching exercises or something. So thank you for the opportunity today to present an update on, well, gosh, it's 3 years now, right, Ann? 3 years of work. So product quality outcomes analytics. We actually got together back in July, I want to say, and we have been thinking about how do we encapsulate in a single statement all of the work that we're doing, which is no easy task. And it's something that we had discussed and had worked along, but it really came together when we had a face-to-face meeting in July. And so what you see here is developing a medical device quality dashboard to guide strategic procurement decisions. So my background is as a supply chain professional in a pediatric hospital. I can tell you that it's outcomes-related data, it's other data analytics that you're seeing more and more coming into and guiding strategic procurement decisions within the healthcare setting. So very, very important. So again, we've encapsulated 3 years of work into one sentence. Kind of crazy. So the first thing that we did in phase one was really lay the foundation. What is quality? So if you start to think about quality, and if we asked everybody in the room here initially, I think everybody may come up with a little bit different definition. There might be some alignment with the definitions, but we really felt it was important during phase one to define the quality domains. So we had more than 7 initially, but as we refined the domains and validated the domains with our manufacturing partners and our value analysis committee partners in the healthcare setting, we ended up landing upon these 7 quality dashboard domains. And these really, again, were fundamental and foundational to the work that we then did through the rest of phase one. So phase one, really, just to kind of level set the group here, we had about 15 participants in phase one. Those participants were our manufacturing partners as well as value analysis committee representatives. We had visions of grandeur and engaging registries and patient advocacy groups, as well as IT, but found it a bit challenging to establishing relationships out of the gate. So again, 15 now. I guess before I assume everybody understands value analysis committee, is that a relatively understood term here with this group, or would it be helpful if I just quick level set everybody? Level set? So value analysis committees are multidisciplinary committees within the hospital setting that will come together. They'll review utilization of products. They will look and analyze new products. Again, this is where the data analytics comes into play. They're made up of physicians, they're made up of clinicians, they're made up of supply chain professionals. You'll see IT come in, you see procedural staff come in. And a lot of it depends on the scope of the project or the product that you're looking at. Some hospitals have multiple value analysis committees. But again, the focus is product utilization, clinical variation, new product analysis, and then of course, if you're bringing a new product in and it's going to reduce infection rates by 50%, post-implementation, are we seeing that reduction? So in essence, that's what a value analysis committee is. So those primarily were the 2 big groups that we had in phase one. I'm happy to say that in phase two, we've experienced a tremendous growth, and I'll touch on some of the groups that are engaged with us in phase two. But again, 7 quality domains, again, very, very important. And these domains were fundamental, again, foundational to the dashboard that we modeled. So initially when we came together as a group, our vision was to create a consumer reports or a J.D. Edwards for products. Is there a dashboard where we can bring multiple sources of analytics into an easy-to-read dashboard for, again, healthcare professionals in determining and guiding strategic procurement decisions, outcomes-based. When you look at the value-based environment that healthcare is in, it is really focused on patient outcomes. It's focused on a cost, appropriate cost for the patient outcomes, as well as the patient experience, the patient satisfaction. So we were able to successfully model the dashboard. Some of the challenges, though, that we did have, again, were around acquiring data sets from other areas. When you begin to think about registries, looking at data that's housed within EHRs, within some of the hospital provider partners that were a part of our Phase 1 team, these other sources were a challenge, and I think it was probably one of the big hurdles that we had in Phase 1 was really bringing together a comprehensive data set. But at the end of the day, you've got a great dashboard that we're able to model. It's a spider chart, and it's based on, again, the 7 different domains of quality. So moving into this year's work, Phase 2, you can see our project charter here. And we really wanted to increase, if you look at some of the metrics, we wanted to increase the registry sources. We wanted to increase hospital collaboration. And then we've got, of course, our completion date of the end of this year. And future efforts, right, alignment with MDIC, the case for quality. We've talked about maturity model. We're going to talk a little bit about CMMI, and as we shift gears here a little bit later on in this presentation, we'll set the stage for 2018. But we came together, I think it was April, right after our March forum meeting, and we had our project charter and hit the ground running. We are a pretty expansive group of all Type A individuals, so we set extremely lofty goals, and you can see some of those goals here within our project status dashboard. I think one of the most satisfying and really exciting aspects of Phase 2, I had mentioned we had 15 participants in Phase 1. We tripled that in Phase 2 to 45 participants, and we've seen growth really in the hospital value analysis side. We've seen growth with registries, and we'll touch on some of the registries that we've engaged with, patient advocacy groups that we're reaching out to and beginning to establish relationships with, as well as IT and solution partners out there across the industry. So tremendous uplift to increase the team, increase that bandwidth, increase that participation from those very important segments. Our dashboard here and where we are to date, you can see the identifying the collaboration. So we've again exceeded our goals of 2 hospitals. I want to say that we've got 9 hospitals, we've got 3 IT partners, we've got 2 registries and 2 or 3 patient advocacy groups that we're working with. So again, tremendous participation across the healthcare and patient ecosystems. So 20%, we're working on defining information. We're working on the interacting with source. We're working, and it's taking time, as I think everybody wouldn't be surprised that it's taking time, in gathering information, data from these other sources. It's not an easy handshake, hey, share your data with me, great, here you go, conversation. There's a lot of work and effort that's going into it. But again, we've got 2 hospitals that are very committed to sharing their data, and hats off here to Dr. Rulin and his team over there at the Carolinas Healthcare System to participate and partner with us in sharing data. So we felt, because we are Type A and had some extremely lofty goals, that the best way to achieve these goals was to break up into 4 sub-teams. So we broke out into a registry team, healthcare provider team, our dashboard and analysis team, and patient perspective teams. And what's coming up here are just some eye charts for you. So you guys, I think we're going to hand all these slides out, right, Stephanie? We'll make them available. Great. So I'm certainly not going to go ahead and read all of these, but you can see the objectives that we had for this team, right? And it's evaluating data from at least 2 registries. So we've engaged in conversations with VQI, the Vascular Quality Initiative, Dr. Jack Cronwet and his team there at VQI. We've also are working with the Peripheral Vascular Intervention team, and we'll put Corey, but that's on the patient side. But you can see our accomplishments, and then we've got our next steps. which is really creating a process and guidelines for registry engagement. So we've got these 2 registries. We're getting some lessons learned as we engage with them so that we can, with the goal of expanding integration and participation with some other registries, and actually going even deeper with the current registries that we are participating and working with. Our healthcare provider team, again, we're looking to analyze data from EHRs with 2 or more healthcare institutions, and so again, we do have those 2 institutions. The work right now is how to get that data, how is that data analyzed, who analyzes that data. So again, some very important questions that need to be finalized, but we're well on our way in those conversations. You can see our accomplishments. Actually, there was a presentation in October. Unfortunately, I had to bail on Ann. I had something come up last minute, but we were able to present this project to AVAP, which is an association for healthcare value analysis professionals. So they've got an association just for those value analysis professionals in the field. And great presentation to talk about our work in that. You can see again here the next steps. Continued outreach to the value analysis teams and gathering the hospital information and data. Again, bringing that into the dashboard to make the dashboard that much more robust. So speaking of the dashboard, we've got our dashboard and analysis team. Again, the objectives are developing and documenting analysis tools for the 7 different quality domains. And so there was analysis that did take place with VQI and with PCORI against the 7 quality domains. And what we're finding is actually, I think it was on the registry team, I failed to mention this, that alignment with the quality domains was really strong around safety and strong around efficacy, reliability as well. So those 3 of those 7 domains, there was really strong alignment within the registry standpoint, which is a great foundation to begin to build the relationship and data sharing with the registries. Again, here with the dashboard and analysis team, you can see that there was a review and alignment with the 7 quality domains with the IHMR, and that is surgical mesh, international hernia mesh registry. All of these acronyms, I'm sorry. I can't keep them straight. And then our patient perspective team. Objectives, again, developing an understanding of available patient perspective data. This is really important, and I think this is probably the biggest hill for us to climb, is access to patient data themselves, right? What are the patients saying? What are the outcomes? And working with some advocacy groups. So we do have a relationship and have been working with PCORI, which is the Patient Center
Outcome Research.
Patient Centers Outcome Research Institute, thank you. Ann is my acronym master here. You know, we have thesaurus, right? I've got Ann. We've got Faster Cures, and actually we're working with Luann Pendy, who is making some inroads or some soft introductions for us to some other patient advocacy groups. And then you can see our next steps here is to identify synergies with the Faster Cure group and gather patient information. Again, the goal with each of these 4 teams, there's a lot of information here that I've certainly skipped over, but I guess the underlying theme I want to leave you with these 4 teams is the idea to bring data from these varied segments, these diverse segments, into this dashboard with the goal of making it a very robust dashboard. So our planned activities over the next couple of months, again, broken out by the various sub-teams that we have. We had a meeting with the Maturity Model Group. We also want to increase connections with NEST. We see those as definite areas for continued engagement and growth as a part of our project moving forward. Oh, wrong button. But really, what I want to do here is just shift gears a little bit. I've talked about phase 1. I've talked about phase 2, the sub-teams that we've developed, the goals of those sub-teams, the overarching goal of phase 2. But really, what has been the theme, I think, that you've heard from previous presentations already today. What's 2018 look like? Let's start thinking, what do those next steps look like here? And so, got a bit of a Venn diagram here to depict moving forward integration, again, with our 7 different quality domains. So I think there's a couple of key areas here that we have identified for 2018, and certainly the roundtable discussions, any questions at the end of our presentation, I think will help to guide some additional areas for focus. But right now, limited access to data. It still continues to be a challenge, and there's no easy fix, there's no magic wand that we can wave and poof, we have data. Do we have the right data? And how is that data being interpreted? So data questions exist, and it's really about defining data needs. So our approach right now is to define what data do we need, not how and be prescriptive how an organization goes and analyzes and provides that data. So I'll use as an example age. We need a data set or data attribute of age in years. Now, we're not going to go to, it's a very simple example, but we're not going to go to a hospital and say, here's exactly how you're going to determine age in years and give that information to us. We're just going to set the target. We need data attribute, age in years, and then allow the organizations to figure out their best approach to analyzing the data they have and presenting that back to us. So we're starting out with some baby steps here, but again, very important steps as we begin to go down that path to data sharing. Technology, existing technology that's out there to support this effort. I had mentioned growth in the 4 key areas: healthcare, registries, patient advocacy groups, and IT. Within the IT and solutions area, we are working with IBM Watson, we are working with Dell, and we are working with GHX. And what we're looking to do here is improve the accuracy and sustainability of the data. We're also looking to improve access to data, again, additional data sources. With Dell, great presentation that was made to our project team a couple of weeks ago on their worldwide herd, if I'm referencing it properly. IBM Watson, of course, there's been a lot of news about IBM Watson and their work in the healthcare space. And really, the goal here is to gather this data, but also to be able to begin to separate the signal from the noise, because there's a lot of noise out there. So how do we begin to bring clarity to the volumes of data that exist? So some areas for opportunity to bring clarity to all of that data is through artificial intelligence, machine learning, algorithms. If you think of the data that exists, a lot of this data is in an unstructured form. In EHRs, 70% of the data in your electronic health records is unstructured. How do you go after that data, and how do you tease out, again, the signal from the noise within those unstructured data sets? If you think about the patient realm, patient advocacy, does it make sense to begin looking at unstructured data in some of the social media circles? People may have more comfort talking to friends than they do a doctor, or might be more truthful in the outcome or their patient experience in some of those forums. Potential exists there? Yes or no? Not sure. But again, there's a volume of unstructured data within those data communities that could lend themselves to helping build out, again, a robust dashboard. So again, tremendous amount of unstructured data. We've already heard a couple times today, we cannot wait for everybody to do things the same way. The old adage is so true: you've seen one hospital, you've seen one hospital. So the goal is not to try and make everybody do it the same way. It's impossible, I think, certainly at this juncture. So again, it's how do we take the existing technology that's available today to bring clarity to the data that's out there, again, to make it relevant, to make it actionable, right? separating, and Dan had mentioned, is separating the signal from the noise. So a great way to portray it. And then additional opportunities, I touched on them briefly, and they've certainly been presented to you all here earlier today, but the maturity model, CMMI, and certainly the work that we're doing here on the product quality team, is there opportunity to take those 7 domains of quality and use that as the network to begin to stitch together the work from the maturity model, the work that's taking place within CMMI and the product quality analytics team, to begin to drive some synergies and get to, I think, Garth, what you brought up there on the definitions. Are these definitions that we can all agree with? Are these the fundamental definitions that, from a starting point coming out of the gates, that we're comfortable with? And now how do we take the data from these various projects? I guess I look at it from a funnel perspective, right? We're all kind of like dancing around the rim of the funnel. But hopefully, as we continue that dance and we begin to move closer and closer together, right, we're going to come down to a much more cohesive solution across the 3 very important work efforts that are taking place right now. And so with that, hopefully I've got you thinking next steps. Hopefully I've kind of pointed you guys to 2018, and I'll turn it over here to Ann Ferriter to take us through the rest of the trip.
Great, thank you. So I think we've been set up perfectly for this next part of the discussion, from Kim and George's slides this morning, and then the discussion of both the maturity model project and the analytics project. We're now ready to start thinking about how do they connect, what do they mean, how do they fit together. And these slides are our initial discussion from some members of the analytics team and some members of the maturity model team. This isn't the definitive end statement of how they connect, but it's definitely meant to get you thinking. So this is a slide that George and I both shared. The maturity model and the product quality dashboard are in their program creation stages. Maturity model is trying to set up a program where firms can be assessed. And next step will be understanding the value of that assessment. The dashboard, we're trying to set up the model of a dashboard. And we've had one iteration where we've gone through and validated that with our value analysis teams, but we don't have a dashboard program yet. So we're both in the early phases. We're not to the bottom yet. But we wanted to start talking about where we're going and what the goal is, because on both the maturity model side and the analytics side, we can shift things if we're not measuring the right things for quality. If the maturity model, and I can see nods from the back, isn't driving product quality the way they intend to, they might bring in other practices. We might bring in other domains. So it's important to start thinking and talking about this now. Just refreshing on the 7 domains. And then these are the 11 practices. Of course, you can't read them. That's okay. I wanted you to have the material of what the 11 practices are, so you can start thinking about how they do drive quality. So there's 11 of them here for you to read on your own. And that's directly from Kim's material. We're not making anything up here. That's maturity model work there. Yeah. So there are 2 ways that we want to talk about it. We're going to talk about ways that the maturity model practices could benefit from information from the outcomes dashboard. And we also want to talk about maturity model practice areas that could drive measurable change in one of the 7 domains. So those are the 2 areas we're going to focus on. And I've got a specific example here on the monitor and control practice area. We think understanding how your product compares to other products in the industry on its ability to survive for its intended lifetime, for it to not have an early failure. We think that that information will help inform your monitor and control practice. It would be good for you to know where you are in the spectrum of your industry. If you are high performing, that's wonderful. If your devices fail more frequently than other devices within your area, then your monitor and control practice may want to consider an improvement in device reliability. So we targeted reliability as one dashboard component that might be considered as you develop your monitor and control practice. And then the flip side is driving change. So the process quality assurance practice area that will be evaluated in the dashboard could drive measurable change in reliability. It could also drive measurable change in patient satisfaction. So the description of process quality assurance focuses on customer satisfaction. And if you're doing it right, then we should be able to see a measurable change. We should be able to evaluate that increased customer satisfaction. And if it ends up that you're putting a lot of time and effort into process quality assurance, but you aren't getting these outcomes, then we need to take a step back and think either about how we're measuring those outcomes. Are we measuring them in an appropriate way? Does it mean what we think it means? Or what practices are you engaging in? And are those practices the most significant to drive improvements in reliability and patient satisfaction? So obviously the 7 domains in the product quality dashboard wouldn't be the only things that would matter to you as a company. You're going to use market information. You're going to use information about the kind of internal needs and strategic initiatives within your company. You're going to be looking at the market. So the 7 domains won't be everything, but they can be a factor. And then the maturity model practice areas will drive change in quality to greater or lesser extents. We saw a couple areas that may not directly drive change in quality, something like governance. That may be, as George said, a second order effect driving quality. So it's not that everything will uniformly impact quality in the same way, but there may be other practice areas that get picked up as we understand more the role of design or innovation in driving quality. As George said also, we see these 3 things as interrelated. And as we get data to populate dashboards and as we get more experience with firms going through the assessments, we're going to look to see what correlates. Does this connect? Is it possible to understand from somebody's metrics product quality? So we're looking for those connections to better understand both sides of the program. And then I've got some questions for you, if you don't have any questions for Mike and I. But there's a lot to think about here and a lot to try to figure out as we keep going forward. Do you have questions for us? Do you have answers? 1, 2, or 3?
I got the magic wand for data.
So within, it's on? Oh. So are there ways for companies to engage with this effort? So specifically, we may be interested in obviously certain devices or certain spaces that we make, and rather than going out for some of that on our own, it seems like a lot of the collaboration and getting the data and some of the groups that maybe we wouldn't get access to. Are there ways to engage with that?
Absolutely. I think we've got about 20 industry members on our team now, and we welcome more. We also, you won't have to join the team at some point to get the data. Right now, we don't have dashboards that are available publicly, but the vision is in the future these dashboards would be available to whoever needed to use them.
Hi, I'm Rama Peripati from Cognizant. So I think it looks like this is lending itself to the real-world data and real-world experience kind of effort. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a point of
Yep.
just a point of clarification. I mean, the intent for the dashboards are not to say this product is best, right? The intent for the dashboard is to provide information for the for the VACs to actually make the decision that's best for them. And the example I always use is, you know, if you have two patients who are going to come in and have knee replacement surgery, and one is, you know, I'm getting closer to that age, but you're getting older, and, you know, and you have a younger person who is active in playing tennis. Well, what's best is dependent on the outcome that that patient expects. So the intent is not to say this product is best, but the intent is to provide the decision makers with the appropriate information so that they can make that decision.
And just to tag on to that, I think certainly some of the feedback we heard during phase one was the limited information that's available right now to physicians and clinicians. A lot of it is manufacturer-sponsored studies, which we understand. A lot of that comes out of the 510K process, but the limited amount of unbiased data that the healthcare professionals are looking for. So again, the creation of a dashboard isn't to say this is the product. Creation of the dashboard is to bring additional data sources together to present information that those individuals, those healthcare professionals, physicians, clinicians, supply chain, et cetera, can utilize as they're guiding, to guide their strategic sourcing decisions for that organization.
Thank you. I was just trying to say this information collected with better signal prevented noise can be used for the real world data and evidence, not necessarily all of it, but definitely a good chunk of it could be used. Thanks.
That's a good point. Thanks, Dan.
Mac McKean, Boston Scientific. Regarding the connections between the dashboard and the model, say a firm has 10 sites, some design, some manufacturing around the world, like many of us do, and this is a site-by-site heat map, right? Say that 8 of their sites are in Happy Land, and 2 aren't. What is the cumulative score? How is that going to be brought together?
That sounds like a dashboard question. Not right. But Beth asked a similar kind of question at the steering committee, so I'll give a similar kind of answer. There may be, as companies are distributed across the world, there may be certain factors, practice areas, quality domains that impact one facility more than another. So there's that piece. And George is raising his hand to help me out here, which I definitely appreciate. And then the outcome, what happens to the patient is kind of the cumulative result of everything happening. So from our perspective, from the
Plant specific.
it doesn't matter. Yeah.
It's product specific, not plant or site specific.
So for an organization that has multiple facilities that are going through the appraisal, there would be a scorecard for each of those facilities. In fact, within that facility, there may be multiple products that are sampled, so there would be, if you will, tabs that are associated with that in that scorecard. That gets rolled up, and you could, and we've done this in other markets as well, you could roll that up into a comprehensive scorecard. Obviously, when you look at it at the 50,000-foot view, you get one perspective. You'd have to drill into the individual scorecards to understand how each of those are performing against the framework.
And then let me walk through an example. So say you've got manufacturing in different, and maybe spec development distributed across the U.S. You have a sterilizer who has a very red chiclet chart. Your product is causing a lot of safety problems, a lot of infections. So that would be an example of, well, we really need to focus on that sterilizer and getting their practice areas improved, that would make a giant impact on product quality.
That help?
That was really good. And this is Robbie Nabar from Illumina. I had a question on, you had mentioned NEST, and we've been talking about an intelligent way of structuring in some form a lot of this unstructured data so that we can at least have the right filters to filter out the noise. Could you give us some sense for where that's going? Because I know there's some work there where Dr. Florence is on, and this, we formed NEST, and I just wanted to understand how this effort was going to synergize with NEST as we go about the subject of real-world evidence.
That is a wonderful question, Robbie. So NEST is still in its infrastructure building stage. Rachel's on board and she's pulling things together, and they have their first 2 projects that they're launching on. We see as a long-term vision that the infrastructure built by NEST will help populate the dashboard. And right now we're working with registries and talking about common data models. NEST is doing that to a much larger extent. NEST is also better positioned to understand EHR data and to get the distributed analytic structure, the federated data analysis that would be needed to populate a dashboard like this. So we think that these projects will come together at some point that will benefit greatly from the NEST infrastructure.
Okay, thank you, Ann.
Yeah. And just to tag on to that, again, Type A team, we had 5 subgroups. The 5th subgroup was NEST, but we figured because they were getting things up and running, building their governance model, staffing, that we would go ahead and table that work group right now until they were a little bit more established in their program. And so one of the things, again, just to leave you with here, we've done a lot of work in the I think in the the 9 months that we've been given this year, right? It's kicking things off in April. But there's a bit of a runway here, folks, with the information and the work that we're engaged in with the registries and with the hospitals, that it's not a quick, again, great, you want to share data? We take it, wonderful, thanks, see ya. There's a long runway here, and so I think you can see the need in 2018 for the work that has started to fully develop. It's going to take some more time before we can get to that point.
Right.
And Mike, I have a question about the way the team thinks about which devices would be suitable for this level of analysis. All of the work that you've done so far has been on implantable devices, right? The original prototypes of the dashboards were knees and ICDs. You shared vascular and hernia meshes here. And I can see why, from a value analysis committee, those buying decisions are big bets. They're critical for patients. On the other extreme, it seems like if you were collecting data on capital equipment, disposable devices, even the data would be actually easier to get, right? A little more independent of the use case. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into implantable device outcomes. So I'm curious to hear how the team thinks about where these tools could be stood up, and is it a range of devices, or do you see it more on critical implantable devices over the long term?
Well, I'll start to answer, and Ann can correct anything I say incorrectly here. We really focused on what are known as the Class 3 devices, and the reason for that focus was really tied to UDI, the Unique Device Identifier, and the capturing of the UDI information in EHRs on the hospital side, as well as in hospital ERP systems, right, the materials management systems. There's also work right now with X12 to include device identifiers for high-risk implants on the claims form. So the fact that while today there isn't a wealth of information or data on those type of products, the Class 3 devices were required for UDI in 2015, if I'm remembering my dates correctly. So we've had 2 years right now where Class 3 devices have had the UDI. There's a 3-year window for field inventory to be worked through all of the distributors, the hospitals, and manufacturing facilities, so that everything in the field has that UDI. And so the goal then is what's going to be the richest source of data? It's going to be those Class 3 implants. So that's why we focused on that category. Does that answer your question?
We have time for one last question, Dr. Ryan.
The analytics team has had quite a number of conversations about data sources and the way to gather patient outcomes related data. I think we have to be cautious about an over-reliance on the electronic health record. And the reason is that as we've implemented it and worked with it for several years at Carolinas, what we figured out is that for instance, for a single data element, there are about 17 different places in the electronic health record where it is entered over and over and over again. They're not connected to one another. Entering it in one place doesn't necessarily connect to the next. And there's a lot of, I guess, error built into EHRs right now related to that. So in my mind, the presence of registries is a way that healthcare professionals are accustomed to reporting quality information. It requires strict definitions of data elements, which any individual health system will pretty much eventually be able to find in its electronic record, knowing that there may be multiple places it can be entered. I think that scrubbing of data will provide the highest quality data. It won't necessarily come anywhere close to being contemporaneous because the human evaluation of the data elements and the scrubbing takes time.
Very good points, which is another reason why we've focused where can we identify registry partners. The vision is that someday, using this worldwide herd distributed analytics, that we would be reaching out to hospitals and say, in your 17 ways that you collect this information, can you send back the summary pre-analyzed answer to these questions? We're not there yet. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.